papeterie bespoke. So she does a lot of like cake toppers and cards and really custom, really cool stuff. And she was saying that too. She said, you know, when you're younger, nobody says to you flat out, you can't do a creative job. But most of us just sort of have it in our head, like creative things are hobbies and we need to do something.
Yeah.
It's funny. And I think too, if your parents were overly creative, like if both of your parents were artists or something, you might go, actually, I could do that. But if you didn't grow up with people that were doing creative things for a living, or even the small business side of it. Like when I was growing up, I never thought I would run my own business. To me, that was like, you need to be a very specific type of person to run a business. I didn't know any other entrepreneurs. There was one friend of mine in high school who started a really small business out of his parents' basement. And he's grown it into a company that I think is probably worth, you know, in the millions now. He's done amazing for himself, and seeing him do that, I mean, obviously my business is a lot smaller scale than that, and on the creative side of things, but sometimes it just takes seeing somebody do something or having an experience as an adult or as you're growing up for you to go, actually, I could do that too.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying is exactly right. Neither of my parents ran their own business, and you know, that it wasn't something I ever considered, you know, an option. And like you said, I think you have this kind of fixation that it has to be a certain type of person that does that. And again, my husband, he runs his own business, and his dad ran his own business, and I don't know if it's just, you know, like you say, when you have a parent that does that, it kind of seems more of an option to you. I mean, when I first met my husband, he wasn't running his own business. He was working within other companies and things like that. And, you know, eventually then went on to do that long before I set up this business. But it was somebody else that was doing it. And I knew this person really well. And again, it wasn't this, you know, mythical kind of creature that you thought are the kind of people that set up their own businesses. It was my, and you know, his went really, you know, well, don't get me wrong, there are rough patches, there are good patches and things, but it was a kind of, it made you see that it's really not that, it's not that, I don't mean it's not hard, of course it's hard, running any business is hard, but it's not that hard to just kind of take the leap and go for it. And actually, you know, you kind of think there are all these really, really awkward, incredibly hard, incredibly time-consuming things that you must be doing in the background, and actually you just need to learn how to do them. And it's the same as anything. As soon as you learn how to do something, it's fine. Somebody teaches you, you go on a course or whatever, and you think, oh, that's okay. This is not that much different from, you know, working in another company. It's just now I'm doing it for myself, you know, and it's totally doable. So we'll see.
See where it goes from here. Well, I think that's really true though, because I remember starting out like in my first jobs after uni, and you spend all this time studying, and I mean, it obviously prepares you in some ways, but until you actually get into a job and start doing it, you realize that everybody's just winging it, whether you're in a traditional job or, we're all just trying to figure it out as we go. And I think even with my business, so I've been doing photography for 12 years now, but it was very much in a part-time capacity at the beginning. I was the same as you. I wanted to learn more about it and I was interested in it, but I never thought this could be my full-time job. And then when I moved to Scotland 5 years ago, I didn't have a job lined up. So that was me being like, okay, let's give this a proper go. And my husband was quite supportive, which was great. And now 5 years in of kind of running this more as a full-time, this is my only job business. I'm still learning things as I go. There's still things that are changing all the time. You're trying to keep up with technology and marketing and different trends. And, you know, I still go on workshops to kind of learn new things. And I don't want to ever get to a point where I become indifferent to it. And I just think, I know enough and leave it at that, because you can always learn more. You can always improve.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was one of the things, you know, within Millinery as well, when I kind of thought about setting up a business, I kind of thought, oh my God, have I got a bit of a cheat doing this? You know, I don't have a qualification in it. Yes, I've trained for a year, but I don't have a badge to say, yes, I've got this degree or I've got this, whatever, you know, and I thought, oh, I can't really do this. And then the more and more I looked into it, and it's the same as anything, even my old job, you know, like, you know, you're constantly learning anyway. And I constantly do additional millinery courses. So, you know, since I finished that and set up the business, I've done various tutorials with like, different milliners and things down in London for London Hat Week and things. I've signed up for other online courses and things, and there's just constant learning. And again, even these like, kind of revered milliners that you're like, oh my God, I want to be like them. I want to be able to do this, down in London. They do tutorials frequently, and you can go and do one-to-one tutorials with them, or you can do group lessons with them. And then this is how they make their money too, and they are bringing out new kind of techniques, or coming up with new techniques, and then training those techniques, in courses as and when things develop. And again, speaking to some other milliners, I always have, and I'm sure it's probably been mentioned lots of times on your podcast, imposter syndrome. And I kind of thought at the start, oh God, can I call myself a milliner? Can I? Is that allowed? That kind of thing. And since I've kind of gone on with this and spoken to a lot of other people who I consider far more well qualified than me to do this at the start, and they were exactly the same. They're like, oh my God, it's putting yourself out there. It's saying, this is this new technique I've worked out how to do this, and then you think, oh my God, is this the way I'm supposed to do it? Is there a proper way to do it that another milliner has done? And then the more and more you talk to other people, they all think the same way, and it's really refreshing actually, when you kind of lose that kind of inhibition and you just think, sod it, this is, I'm doing this and it seems to be working, and I'm trying to better myself with new techniques, I'm trying to sort of keep training and whatever, and enjoying it at the same time, so and I think that's kind of an age thing as well. Like, I was never a very confident person when I was much younger. I could never have dreamed of speaking in public or anything like that, and it probably took me maybe to, I would say my mid-20s until I became not super confident, but at least happy and confident in the job that I had at that point, and confident to be training other people and sort of speaking at conferences and things like that. And then maybe when I got into my early 30s, it was like, yeah, you don't really give a damn what anybody thinks, and that has such a profound effect on how you go about doing things. You just don't really care what people think anymore, which is it's such a limiting factor when you're trying to sort of develop in your career. But yeah, that kind of then taking the step back to being a beginner, at millinery, as opposed to having been quite established in my previous career. And then it was like, oh my God, I'm like the new kid again. I'm making mistakes. I don't want to, to do this. And again, because it's such a completely different environment now, it's me on my own. I am putting things out on Instagram, using that, for, just publicity and things. And then you're like, oh my God, should I put that on there? Is that good enough quality? Is somebody going to zoom in and look at that and go, oh my God, look at her stitch work, that's terrible, and again, I still, I still get that quite a lot, but I'm less affected by it, having spoken to other people as well. And you're like, this is how you do it. That's what you do. It's how you learn, and it's how you improve. So
I'm nodding away over here as you're talking, because I can so relate to this. I think you're absolutely right. Almost anybody that you speak to who's kind of being open and honest about what it's like will say the same thing. But I do that all the time with my photos. So I'll share a photo, and maybe there's something that isn't, to me, looking at it as a photographer, maybe had I had more time to plan out a shot, I might have had the lighting slightly different or positioned something different, or as you say, maybe there's a small detail that's not perfect. And I do that all the time. I think, is everybody else looking at that and seeing that one little detail? The reality of it is you're being way harder on yourself, because that's what you do professionally. But it's the imposter syndrome is such a huge hang up for, I think, almost all of us when we start out in business. And I still find it creeps in sometimes. The funny thing is, like, you can kind of see where that comes from when you're starting out and it looks like everybody else has way more experience or qualifications or whatever. But it's funny to me that sometimes it still pops in my head. And I don't know if it's just because, as much as I try not to, it's really hard on the kind of discouraging days not to compare yourself to others who seem like they're further ahead or better, or their business is doing better than yours is, or what it is. But yeah, it is real, and almost everybody that I speak to who owns a business has experienced it quite regularly during their growth.
Totally, yeah. It's like you said, it's still there. I mean, I know, like, I feel like I've been doing this for 8 years, but then I think my previous career was a lot longer than 8 years, and I think I'm still completely new at this, really. But it's gradually over the years, like other milliners and things, Instagram has been a good thing because you can kind of get in touch with people. And I remember one of the milliners who I followed, again from Scotland, had got in touch, and she was like, oh, just thought I'd introduce myself, wondered if you wanted to meet for a coffee one day or something, I'm kind of just starting out. And I think her comment actually was something like, it would be great to talk to somebody who seems to be a little more further on and a little more established in their business. And I was like, oh my God, that's like, I was honestly like nearly fell off my chair. I thought, seriously, like somebody has that impression of me. I was like, oh my God, this is whatever. And so that was like, it was like a real boost. And I remember replying back to her, I was like saying, I'm so glad you think that, because it's, as long as it looks that way, it certainly doesn't feel that way, and it's just nice to have that wee bit of support. And, gradually over the years, we've kind of, a few other milliners, again, Get Girls all working on their own, have kind of, got in touch, and we have a bit of a moan and a bit of a, oh my God, I can't do this sort of thing on Instagram. And it's fab to have that. Because that was one of the big things that I was really scared about leaving my old job, was the, when I worked in a sort of, I think it was about 30 employees or so, a tech company I worked for. And if ever, you were doing something that you were struggling with, you were just tapping somebody on the shoulder like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, can you help me? And problem was solved within 5 minutes. And now you're sat at your workbench trying to get this technique right, and you just can't get it, and it's awful. You're like, totally challenging yourself, berating yourself for being useless and things, and it takes a lot longer. But it's really good to have that kind of, as loose as it is, little kind of network rocking around with these other people that you can, give a little bit of a shout out to and ask for a hand. It's very good. It makes such a difference, because that was a big worry leaving, when I was leaving the company. So
I totally agree. So I worked in communications before. So my first job out of uni was a journalist, and then I got more into the communication side of it. But when we were doing things like a marketing campaign or planning an event or things like that, there were always other people that you would bounce ideas off of and brainstorm. And as you say, if you were struggling with something, there was somebody else right there. And it's interesting, because one of the benefits of having your own business is that you do get to make the decisions. You get to take your business in whatever direction you want. But the downside of that is that you don't have that support network, as you say, to kind of help you on the tough days or when you want another opinion. And I found the same. There's quite a few photography groups that I'm in, mostly kind of within Scotland, but there are some that are larger scale as well. And everybody's so good about that. If somebody's really struggling with something or having a down day, or maybe dealing with a customer service issue that they don't know how to handle, people are so good about jumping in and sharing their opinion. And I think without that, I don't know that I would have lasted running my own business. I think it would have been too easy to just give up on the tough days, or it would be too isolating. But that is one thing that I think social media is so good for, is keeping you connected as a small business owner. Because you're right, otherwise it's just you sitting, whether it's, your office or at home, trying to figure everything out on your own, and it can feel quite lonely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was such a relief to me when that girl kind of got in touch and said, and I was like, oh my God, this is great, people do this, and I had found groups, there's like kind of Facebook groups or other sort of women's business groups and things, and it took me a while to realize that was out there, to sort of, the support was there. And when I did, it was honestly like a weight off my shoulders. It was like, oh my God, this is going to be so much better now that I have these kind of people to help, and and likewise offer help too, when things are going wrong. So it does make a difference. It's not quite as lonely as it could be. So, and don't get me wrong, I like working alone. I am quite a loner when it comes to that. And in terms of, I have my studio in the house, but it is a separate room. It's locked away. It's not kind of, I have the separation from home and whatever, but I do enjoy working myself. Like I said, at the start of, COVID and coronavirus, when this all went a bit belly up in March, when my husband started working at home as well, like I said, it was a bit of a novelty for the first couple of weeks. It was like, oh, this is quite nice. And then it was like, oh my God, I want my own space back. This is a nightmare, And we're very much still in that struggle just now, but yeah, it's, there's working on your own in a room, and then there's having, there's not having a support network, and it transfers as two different things. So yeah, it was quite helpful to find out that support was all there.
Yeah, so I think the groups that you can find, whether it's within your industry or out with your industry, as you mentioned, just a group of women in business, for example. We are
Yeah.
both members of Business Collective Scotland, which
Yep.
is a relatively new a new networking group, and that's been so great. I mean, we connected through there. I think we already followed each other on Instagram, actually, but I mean, we hadn't really spoken like this before. And finding groups like that so that you do feel less alone and you have other people who can relate, because I don't know about you, I didn't have very many other friends that ran small businesses before this, and now